In the 41st millennium, there is only war. 1,000,000 worlds burn under the Emperor's banner, and faith is the currency of survival. But what happens when something from beyond the stars, something that should not exist, arrives with its own unshakable code? The Imperium had faced demons, xenos, and traitors beyond counting. Yet nothing had prepared them for a man who believed justice could exist without gods. The shrine world of Calixis Theta trembled. It began as a distortion in the upper atmosphere, a tear that registered on no augur array, no auspex scanner. The tech priests monitoring the orbital stations saw only static, heard only whispers in binary that translated to impossible contradictions. Then the sky broke. Lightning the color of liquid midnight carved through the clouds. Thunder rolled across the pilgrim camps below, sending millions to their knees in prayer. The ecclesiarchy believed it a miracle. The Mechanicus called it gravitational impossibility. The Inquisition knew it was heresy. At the epicenter of the impact crater, surrounded by glassed sand and the ozone stench of violated reality, lay a man in black armor. He should have been dead. The fall alone would have liquefied an unaugmented human. The warp exposure should have rendered him a gibbering madman or a doorway for demons. Yet when the first responders, a squad of Adepta Sororitas from the nearby convent, arrived with flamers raised, they found him conscious. His eyes opened behind a bat-shaped cowl, scanning his surroundings with methodical precision that spoke of training, not terror. "Identify yourself, stranger," Sister Superior Agatha demanded, her voice crackling through her helmet's vox grill. "Speak, or be cleansed in his name." The man rose slowly, hands visible but not raised in surrender. His movements carried the efficiency of a warrior who had calculated 17 escape routes before standing. His armor was like nothing in the Imperium's archives. Sleek, articulated, covered in pouches and devices that served unknown purposes. No purity seals, no aquila, no evidence of imperial allegiance whatsoever. "Where am I?" His voice was a graveled rasp, controlled despite the circumstances. Not the voice of a man pleading for his life, the voice of someone gathering information. "You stand on sacred ground, heretic," Agatha snarled. "The shrine world of Calixis Theta in the God Emperor's domain. Your appearance coincides with warp disturbance. You will come with us for questioning, or you will burn." Behind his cowl, Bruce Wayne assessed the situation with the same cold calculation that had served him in Gotham's darkest alleys. The women surrounding him wore power armor, crude by his standards, but functional. Bolters, he noted. Explosive mass-reactive ammunition. Flamers capable of turning him to ash. Their discipline was military grade, their zealotry evident in every gesture. He'd dealt with fanatics before, but the weight in the air here felt different, heavier, like reality itself was watching, waiting to see what he'd do. "I'll cooperate," he said, because fighting 15 armored religious zealots with technology he didn't understand yet was tactically suicidal. "But I'm not your enemy." "That," said a voice from beyond the crater's rim, "remains to be determined." The sororitas parted as a figure descended into the impact site. The man wore a long coat of black leather over armor inscribed with high Gothic scripture. His face was gaunt, hawkish, marked by a bionic eye that whirred as it focused on Batman. At his hip hung a plasma pistol and a power sword. On his chest, displayed with absolute authority, was a symbol Batman's detective mind immediately cataloged as significant. A stylized eye decorated with a skull, wreathed in laurels. "I am Inquisitor Lord Hestian Vale of the Ordo Hereticus," the man announced, his voice carrying the weight of institutional power. "By my authority, you are detained for investigation of heretical activity, warp taint, and unauthorized existence." Batman's eyes narrowed. He'd been arrested before, by Commissioner Gordon, by various governments, even once by Superman. This felt different. This man had the look of someone who could order his execution and sleep soundly afterward. "I'm not from your world," Batman said carefully. "I was pulled here through An accident. Dimensional breach. I'm not infected, corrupted, or hostile. Vale's bionic eye clicked through several spectrum analyses. Your biological readings are remarkably human. Unaugmented even, which makes your survival of atmospheric entry miraculous or suspicious. He stepped closer, studying Batman like a specimen. You carry no chaos taint I can detect, yet you emerged from a warp rift. You speak Gothic as though born to it, yet claim dimensional origin. You are either the greatest liar I've encountered, or something far more interesting. I'm telling the truth, Batman said flatly. Truth is the first casualty of the warp, stranger. Vale gestured, and the sororitas moved to bind Batman's hands with electromagnetic shackles. You will accompany me to my facility. There, we will determine whether you are victim, heresy, or asset. The difference will determine whether you live or die screaming. As the shackles clicked into place, Batman didn't resist. He was gathering data, the technology, the hierarchy, the religious undertones in every word spoken. This wasn't Gotham. This wasn't even Earth. But it was a system, and systems could be understood, analyzed, used. One question, Batman said as they led him toward a matte black shuttle that screamed military authority. What year is this? Vale smiled without humor. It is the 41st Millennium, stranger. The age of the Imperium. And you have the grave misfortune of arriving at the attention of the Inquisition. Batman filed that away. 41st Millennium. 40,000 years after his time. Gotham was dust. Earth was... He'd find out. For now, he needed to survive the immediate threat. An organization that apparently had the authority to execute first and investigate never. The shuttle's interior was cramped, utilitarian, decorated with skulls and purity seals. Batman sat in silence as they ascended, his mind already working on the central problem. How to survive long enough to find a way home, or, if that proved impossible, how to operate in a universe that seemed built on authoritarianism and religious extremism. Through the viewport, he caught his first glimpse of this new reality. The shrine world stretched below, a planet of cathedrals and pilgrim routes, billions of souls moving in worship toward structures that dwarfed anything from his era. In orbit, he saw warships the size of cities, bristling with weapons that could crack continents. Bruce Wayne had faced impossible odds before, but looking at that fleet, at the scale of the Imperium's power, he felt something he rarely allowed himself to feel. Doubt. Then he crushed it. Doubt was a luxury. Analysis was survival, and Batman always survived. If you crave stories of impossible collisions and cosmic stakes, smash that subscribe button. The Emperor protects those who bear witness to the Dark Millennium, and this detective's crusade has only just begun. The Inquisitorial Fortress hung in high orbit above Calixis Theta, a cathedral carved from asteroid and void steel. Its spires reached toward nothing, Gothic architecture twisted into a statement of dominance over the vacuum itself. Batman cataloged every detail as the shuttle docked. Defensive batteries, patrol patterns, structural weak points. Old habits from a lifetime of planning escapes from places designed to hold him. They led him through corridors lined with skulls. Not decorative, actual human remains set into the walls like warnings. The air smelled of incense and oil, recycled through systems that wheezed with age. Everything was built to last millennia, maintained through ritual rather than understanding. His detective's mind recoiled at the inefficiency, even as it noted the psychological impact. This place was designed to break spirits before interrogations even began. The interrogation chamber was exactly what he expected. A throne of black iron for Vale, shackles suspended from chains, servo skulls hovering in the corners, recording everything with dead eyes that still twitched. The sororitas remained outside, But Batman could sense other presences, guards, servitors, perhaps something worse. Vale sat, steepling his fingers. His bionic eye never stopped whirring, cycling through analysis modes Batman could only guess at. You've been silent during transport. Observing. Calculating. I recognize the pattern. You're a soldier. Or an operative. Intelligence gatherer, perhaps. Detective, Batman said. The word felt inadequate for what he'd been, but it was accurate enough. A detective. Vale's organic eye gleamed with interest. How quaint. And what did you detect during your brief transit through my domain? Batman met his gaze. That you're not going to kill me yet. If you wanted me dead, I'd have been executed on the surface. You're curious, which means I have value as an unknown quantity. You're also cautious. This entire facility is designed to contain threats far beyond a single unaugmented human, which tells me you face enemies that require this level of paranoia. Silence. Then Vale laughed, a dry, mirthless sound. Sister Agatha reported you showed no fear when confronted with flamers. Now I understand why. You're analyzing your captors like specimens. He leaned forward. Tell me, detective, what do you deduce about the Imperium from what you've seen? It was a test. Batman recognized interrogation techniques from a dozen agencies. Vale was probing for attitudes, heresies, incompatibilities with Imperial doctrine. One wrong answer could mean a bolt round through the skull. But Batman had built a career on reading people, and Vale's body language suggested genuine intellectual curiosity beneath the threat. Authoritarian theocracy spanning multiple worlds, Batman said carefully. Military-industrial complex fused with religious infrastructure. Technology treated as holy rather than scientific. Symbols everywhere. The skull motif suggests memento mori philosophy, constant reminder of mortality. Or martyrdom. The scale of your ships and architecture suggests either vast resources or spectacular waste, possibly both. Vale's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his organic eye. Approval? Continue. You called yourself Ordo Hereticus, Order of Heresy. Your organization hunts ideological threats, not just military ones. Which means the Imperium's greatest fear isn't external enemies, it's internal corruption. Your authority supersedes normal command structures, which makes you either sanctioned inquisitors or exceptionally powerful tyrants. Given the infrastructure supporting you, I'd say the former. Astute. Vale rose, circling Batman like a predator evaluating prey. You've described the Imperium of Man with remarkable accuracy for someone who's been here less than 4 hours. Now tell me what you think of what you've seen. Another test. Batman's jaw tightened. I think you're fighting something worse than yourselves, or you wouldn't accept this level of oppression. I think you've normalized atrocity in service of survival. And I think you're asking me these questions because you already know I'm dangerous. Not to you directly, but to your orthodoxy. Vale stopped pacing. For 3 heartbeats, Batman calculated the distance to the plasma pistol on Vale's hip, the trajectory needed to... You're correct on all counts, Vale said quietly. We fight the ruinous powers, chaos itself, demons that corrupt thought, Xenos that devour worlds, traitors who would burn the Imperium to ashes. We accept oppression because the alternative is extinction. We normalize atrocity because mercy is a luxury that feeds the enemy. He returned to his throne. And yes, you are dangerous. Not because you're powerful. You're merely human, as am I. But because you think. Batman said nothing. Let Vale fill the silence. The Imperium discourages independent thought, Detective. We provide catechisms, not questions. Doctrine, not debate. For 10,000 years, this has been our bulwark against chaos. Yet it has also made us stagnant, calcified. Vale's bionic eye focused on Batman with laser precision. I am Ordo Hereticus, My purpose is to root out corruption. But I am also practical. The Imperium faces threats from without and rot from within. Resources are finite. Competence is rare. Batman saw where this was going. You want to recruit me. I want to determine if you're an asset or a liability, Vale corrected. Your arrival was no accident. The warp doesn't simply spit out unaugmented humans who survive with minds intact. Something about you resisted corruption during transit. That suggests either exceptional willpower or latent psychic potential. The latter would require immediate execution. The former, he smiled thinly. The former is useful. What makes you think I'd work for you? Because I can see it in your eyes, Detective. You've already noted 3 escape routes from this chamber, calculated the guard's response time, assessed my combat capabilities. You're running scenarios constantly. It's who you are. You're a hunter of criminals, yes? Vale leaned back. The 41st Millennium is the greatest crime scene in history. Conspiracies spanning sectors, corruption threading through institutions, murders counted in billions, and you're sitting here, unemployed and irrelevant. The words landed like punches. Batman's hands flexed against his shackles. I offer you purpose, Vale continued. Join the Inquisition, not as a mind-wiped servitor or lobotomized cherub, but as an operative. You'll carry my authority, hunt the threats I designate, and employ your detective skills in service of humanity's survival. In exchange, you live. You matter. You do what you were clearly born to do. And if I refuse? Vale's expression hardened. Then I classify you as a warp anomaly of unknown origin and have you mind-scrubbed for information before execution. Your skills die with you. Your knowledge is extracted through pain, and the galaxy continues unchanged. You become a footnote in my reports, forgotten before the ink dries. Batman stared at the Inquisitor. This was coercion dressed as opportunity, the oldest trick in the authoritarian playbook. Work for us or die. Except Vale wasn't lying about the stakes. Batman had seen enough in the short shuttle ride to understand this Imperium operated on scales that dwarfed anything from his era. If he died here, no one would know. No one would care. And there was something else. Something Vale had said that resonated despite the setting's brutality. The greatest crime scene in history. Batman had spent his life in Gotham because it needed him. Because without someone willing to stand against the darkness, the city would drown in it. If this Imperium was as corrupt and threatened as Vale suggested, if it was really fighting existential threats that justified its authoritarianism, could he walk away? Could Bruce Wayne, who dedicated his existence to justice, refuse to act when confronted with galactic-scale injustice? No, that wasn't who he was. But he also wasn't about to become a tool for tyrants. I'll work with you, Batman said carefully. On one condition. I choose my methods. I don't execute civilians on suspicion. I don't virus bomb planets because it's convenient. You give me targets, I investigate and neutralize them. But I do it my way. Vale studied him for a long moment. Then he gestured, and the shackles released with a pneumatic hiss. We'll see how long your principles survive contact with reality, Detective. Welcome to the Inquisition. Vale stood, extending a hand, not in friendship, but in sealing a contract. You'll need a new designation. Your true name stays buried. In the Imperium, you'll be Inquisitor Knight, Batman said, taking the hand. The word felt right. Dark Knight. Gotham Knight. Now something else. Inquisitor Knight of the Ordo Hereticus. Vale's grip was iron. May the Emperor have mercy on your soul. Because this galaxy certainly won't. The quarters Vale assigned him were Spartan. A cell elevated to habitation by the addition of a thin mattress and a steel desk. Batman didn't sleep. Instead, he stood at the narrow viewport, watching Calixis Theta turn below, its surface a tapestry of cathedral spires and processional routes where billions walked in endless pilgrimage. 40,000 years. Everyone he'd known was dust. Gotham was gone. Earth itself was likely unrecognizable. The weight of that temporal displacement should have crushed him, but Bruce Wayne had learned long ago to compartmentalize grief. Mourn later. Survive now. A servo skull drifted through the open doorway, its mechanical jaw clicking. Inquisitor Knight. Lord Vale summons you to the armory. Orientation begins in 17 minutes. Batman followed the floating skull through corridors that seemed designed to disorient. He noted surveillance points, guard rotations, the thickness of bulkheads. The fortress was a prison as much as a headquarters, designed to contain what it housed. The armory was a cathedral to violence. Weapons lined the walls in ordered rows. Bolters, plasma rifles, power swords, flamers, and devices Batman didn't recognize. Tech priests moved among the racks like priests tending altars, their augmented limbs performing maintenance rituals that mixed engineering with prayer. Vale stood at the center, beside a table bearing equipment clearly meant for Batman. The Inquisition operates on authority, not resources, Vale began without preamble. What you see here has been requisitioned from a dozen sources. Astra Militarum, Adeptus Mechanicus, even confiscated heretic materials. You'll select what suits your methods. Batman approached the table. His own suit, what remained of it, lay there, partially disassembled. A tech priest had cataloged each component with clinical precision. Beside it sat Imperial alternatives. A suit of light carapace armor, black as void. Functional, protective, but heavier than what he was used to. A bolt pistol, the Imperium's ubiquitous sidearm. Several frag grenades. A chainsword that seemed to offend every principle of elegant weapon design. And a rosette, the inquisitorial symbol that would grant him terrifying authority. Your original armor is fascinating, Vale said, picking up Batman's cowl. Ballistic weave of unknown composition. Integrated technology. Our Mechanicus adepts are still analyzing. Whoever constructed this understood materials science at a level we've lost, or never possessed. He set it down carefully. It can be repaired, integrated with Imperial systems. But it will take time we don't have. Then I'll adapt, Batman said, studying the Imperial gear with critical eyes. The carapace armor was crude but serviceable. The bolt pistol was brutally effective, if wasteful. He'd need to modify his tactics for weapons that prioritized overwhelming force over precision. Good. Vale gestured to a tech priest who approached with servo arms extending. Magos Galen will handle integration. You'll be equipped within the hour. Then comes the difficult part, which is understanding what we fight. Vale's expression darkened. In your world, Detective, what was the worst thing you encountered? Criminality? Madness? Political corruption? All of those, Batman said. And worse. Then forget them. They're children's games compared to what exists here. Vale activated a hololith projector. Images flickered into existence. Things that shouldn't be possible. Entities of writhing flesh and impossible geometry. Symbols that hurt to look at. Worlds burning under green fire. The ruinous powers, Vale continued. Chaos. It exists in the warp. The immaterium. A realm of psychic energy and emotion given form. 4 gods reign there. Korn, god of rage and slaughter. Nurgle, lord of decay and despair. Tzinch, architect of schemes and change. Slanesh, prince of excess and sensation. They are not metaphors, Knight. They are real. They are hungry. And they want to consume reality itself. Batman's jaw tightened. He'd faced things in Gotham that defied easy explanation. Man-Bat's mutations. Poison Ivy's plant control. Clayface's impossible biology. But those had scientific underpinnings, however esoteric. What Vale described sounded like mass delusion. Batman said. Weaponized faith creating... Stop! Vale's voice cracked like a whip. That kind of thinking will kill you. Chaos is not delusion. It feeds on emotion, but it is objectively real. Demons breach reality and slaughter worlds. Possessed humans gain impossible strength. Sorcerers reshape matter with a word. Deny it, rationalize it, and you'll die screaming while demons wear your skin. The hololith shifted, showing a world mid-invasion. Creatures that violated anatomy poured from a rift in space. Cities burned. Humans transformed into shrieking monsters. Batman watched, expression unreadable. How do you fight it? Faith, discipline, ruthlessness. Vale deactivated the projection. The Imperium worships the God Emperor of mankind. He sits on the golden throne on Terra, neither living nor dead, holding back the warp through psychic might. His faith protects us, literally. Prayer and purity seals have measurable effects against demonic influence. Doubt is a weapon chaos wields. Batman processed this. In his world, religion was personal, psychological. Here, it was apparently tactical necessity. The implications were staggering and horrifying. You don't believe, Vale observed. I can see it. You're already trying to rationalize this as mass psychosis or unexplained phenomena. That doubt makes you vulnerable. I believe what I can verify, Batman said. Show me evidence, not propaganda. Evidence. Vale smiled without warmth. Very well. Your first assignment will provide all the evidence you require. A hive world, Scintilla Magnus. 3 weeks' travel from here. Population, 17 billion. The Arbites reported anomalies 6 months ago. Increased cult activity. Workers disappearing into the underhive. Strange mutations among the lower classes. Standard pattern for Genestealer infestation. Genestealer. Xenos organism. Tyranid vanguard. They infect humans through genetic kiss, creating hybrid offspring loyal to the hive mind. Over generations, the cult grows, hidden among the population. When enough are seeded, they summon the Tyranid fleet. The planet is devoured. 17 billion souls consumed to feed an alien hunger. Vale pulled up schematics of a city that made Gotham look provincial. Spires reaching into toxic clouds. Hive levels descending kilometers into darkness. Billions crammed into spaces never meant for human habitation. Your task: infiltrate the underhive. Identify the cult. Purge it before the infestation spreads. Vale met Batman's eyes. This is detective work, Knight. Investigation, infiltration, elimination. Your specialty, yes? Batman studied the schematics. The hive's structure was a nightmare of overcrowding and vertical stratification. Finding a hidden cult in that chaos would require every skill he possessed. What are my rules of engagement? Cult members are beyond redemption. Genestealer DNA rewrites their loyalty at a genetic level. They cannot be saved, negotiated with, or cured. They exist only to feed their alien masters. Vale's voice hardened. You will kill them. All of them. Hesitation means the hive falls. The planet dies. Billions more suffer. There is no middle ground. There it was. The line Batman had never crossed. In Gotham, he'd stopped killers without becoming one. He'd believed in redemption, in the possibility of saving even the worst criminals. Alfred had called it his greatest strength. Some, like Red Hood, had called it weakness. And if I refused to execute infected civilians? Batman asked quietly. Then you failed your first test, and I was wrong about you. Vale's bionic eye whirred, refocusing. The Imperium cannot afford mercy, Knight. Every resource spent saving the damned is a resource stolen from the innocent. If you cannot accept that calculus, you'll die trying to save enemies who'll kill you without hesitation. Batman's hands curled into fists. Everything in him rebelled against the logic. But he'd also seen the hololith footage, watched worlds burn because hesitation allowed horrors to spread. In Gotham, criminals had agency, choice. They could be stopped, imprisoned, potentially reformed. But what Vale described, genetic rewriting, psychic domination, literal mind control, that was different. If cult members truly had no agency, no possibility of return, was killing them mercy? Self-defense? Murder? He didn't know. And that uncertainty terrified him more than anything else in this new universe. "I'll go to Scintilla Magnus," Batman said finally. "I'll investigate, and I'll do what's necessary." Vale nodded slowly. "That's all I ask. Necessity. Not enthusiasm, not righteousness, just the willingness to do what must be done." He handed Batman the rosette, a symbol of authority backed by millennia of institutionalized brutality. "Welcome to the Ordo Hereticus, Inquisitor Knight. May you keep your soul longer than most." Batman took the rosette. Its weight felt like damnation. But he'd made his choice, and Bruce Wayne never broke his commitments, even if this one might break him first. The transport ship Righteous Endeavor was a utilitarian nightmare. A bulk hauler converted for inquisitorial use, its cargo holds repurposed into barracks and interrogation chambers. Batman spent the 3-week voyage learning. The ship's library was a collection of data slates and crumbling texts, maintained by a hunched scribe servitor whose organic components had been reduced to brain and hands. Batman devoured everything: Imperial history, Xenos classifications, chaos manifestations, hive world sociology. Each text was propaganda wrapped around kernels of actionable intelligence. The Imperium, he learned, was a corpse pretending at life. Its founder, the God Emperor, had been mortally wounded 10,000 years ago, sustained on a life support throne that consumed 1,000 psychic souls daily. Without him, faster-than-light travel would be impossible. The warp would swallow reality, and humanity would fall. Everything, every atrocity, every authoritarian decree, every burned world was justified by that single truth. Without the Emperor, humanity dies. Batman understood the logic even as it disgusted him. It was the ultimate trolley problem, scaled to galactic proportions. Kill billions to save trillions. Oppress countless to preserve the species. The Imperium wasn't evil by choice. It was evil by mathematics. That didn't make it right, but it made it comprehensible. In the ship's training chamber, Batman adapted to Imperial weaponry. The bolt pistol kicked like a mule, firing rocket-propelled explosive rounds designed to pulverize targets. Subtle it wasn't. Effective it absolutely was. He practiced until muscle memory adjusted, until he could put rounds through servo-skull-sized targets at 50 meters. The carapace armor felt wrong, heavier, less mobile than his suit, but it would stop a lasgun shot, and the Imperium's enemies wouldn't be street thugs with Saturday night specials. He drilled in it until movement became natural again, relearning his own body's parameters. Magos Gaelan had integrated some of Batman's original equipment into Imperial systems. His grapnel launcher now used magnetic anchors blessed with Mechanicus rituals. His utility belt held Imperial breaching charges alongside his own smoke pellets. The cowl had been reinforced with ceramite plating, its lenses upgraded with Auspex sensors that could detect thermal, electromagnetic, and, supposedly, warp signatures. It wasn't the bat suit, but it would serve. On the 19th day of transit, Batman stood in the observation deck, watching the warp flow past the Geller field. Reality outside the ship was liquid madness, colors that shouldn't exist, shapes that hurt perception. He'd been warned never to look directly at the warp without protection. Now he understood why. His mind tried to find patterns in the chaos, and the chaos tried to pattern his mind in return. "Staring into the immaterium is how madness begins," said a voice behind him. Batman turned. A woman stood in the doorway, tall and scarred, wearing the crimson robes of the Adepta Sororitas. Sister Superior Agatha, the one who'd found him on Calixis Theta. She approached the viewport, but kept her eyes carefully averted from the warp. "You're assigned to Scintilla Magnus?" Batman asked. "Lord Vale requested I accompany you. To observe and report." She glanced at him sidelong. "He wants to know if you'll break, if your principles will survive first contact with true evil. You think they won't? I think you're a man from a gentler age, Inquisitor Knight. You speak of investigation and justice like they matter. Here, only survival matters." Her hand rested on the bolter maglocked to her thigh. "I've fought Genestealers before. Watched them tear through PDF troopers like paper. Seen cult ambushes turn entire squads into biomass. You can't interrogate them. You can't redeem them. You can only kill them before they kill you." Batman met her gaze. "You think I'm weak. I think you're untested. There's a difference." Agatha's expression softened fractionally. "Vale sees potential in you. I see a man who hasn't yet learned what this galaxy demands. We'll find out which of us is right on Scintilla Magnus." The ship shuddered, a harmonic vibration that rattled through the superstructure. The warp outside the viewport began to slow, congealing into something almost stable. "Translation to real space in 4 hours," Agatha said. "I suggest you prepare, Inquisitor. The Underhive doesn't forgive hesitation." She left. Batman remained, watching the warp fade as the Geller field pushed it back. His reflection stared back from the armored glass. Cowl, cape, the rosette at his chest. He looked like something from the Imperium's Gothic nightmares, a figure designed to inspire fear. Good. Fear was a tool, and he'd need every tool at his disposal. Scintilla Magnus appeared in the viewport 4 hours later, and Batman's breath caught despite himself. The Hive world was a monument to dystopian excess. 100 massive city spires jutted from the planet's surface like infected teeth, each one housing billions. The spaces between were toxic wastelands, industrial runoff and pollution that had rendered the surface uninhabitable millennia ago. Orbital platforms circled like carrion birds, processing ore and refuse into the Imperium's endless war machine. The righteous Endeavor docked at Spire Primus's orbital tether, and Batman descended via bulk elevator with Agatha and a kill team of 6 Militarum Tempestus, stormtroopers whose discipline rivaled any special forces unit he'd known. They wore enclosed helmets and carried hell guns, their body language suggesting they'd done this before. Sergeant Kane, their leader, briefed Batman during descent. "Hive Primus, population 9 billion. Spire nobility at the top, laborers in the midsections, scum in the underhive. Cult activity concentrated in the sump levels, below official habitation, where the desperate and forgotten gather. We go in quiet, identify the pure strain patriarch if possible, and eliminate the infestation at its source." "And if we're discovered?" Batman asked. Kane's helmet turned toward him. "Then we fight our way out, or die trying. Standard inquisitorial operation, sir." The elevator descended through the Hive's strata. Batman watched through reinforced viewports as they passed through levels of society stratified by altitude. The upper spire was Baroque grandeur, nobles in finery, servitors carrying palanquins, gold filigree on every surface. The mid-hive was cramped industrial efficiency, manufactorums and hab blocks crammed with workers. The lower levels were shadows and rust, where light came from chemical fires and hope came not at all. They disembarked at sub-level 89, just above the underhive proper. The air here tasted of metal and desperation. The PDF checkpoint they passed was manned by soldiers who looked like they expected to die at their posts. Beyond the checkpoint, the Imperium's authority was theory, not practice. Batman activated his cowl's auspex. The sensors painted the environment in overlapping data streams. Thermal signatures, electromagnetic emissions, structural weak points. Thousands of people moved through the corridors ahead, their heat signatures clustering around water sources and food dispensaries. "We're looking for mutations," Agatha said, her bolter held in low ready. "Extra limbs, chitin growths, cranial deformations. Advanced hybrids are obvious. First and second generation can pass for human if you're not looking carefully." "And the pure strain?" "Imagine a xenomorph designed by nightmares. 4 arms, talons that cut ceramite, hypnotic psychic presence. They hide in the deepest darkness, spreading their genetic curse through reproduction." Her voice was tight. "If we encounter one, concentrated fire. Don't let it close distance." They moved into the underhive proper. The corridors here were barely maintained, walls sweating condensation, flickering lumens casting dancing shadows, the sound of dripping water and distant screams. Batman's detective instincts screamed warnings. This was predator territory. Ambush heaven. He'd worked Gotham's sewers and feared nothing. But Gotham's sewers didn't house alien infiltrators with genetic mind control. "Movement," Kane whispered. 30 meters, right junction." Batman's auspex confirmed it. 3 signatures. Humanoid, but wrong. Their thermal patterns showed additional heat sources where none should be. Extra limbs, maybe. Or accelerated metabolism. "I'll scout ahead," Batman said. "Negative," Kane replied. "We stay together. Standard." Batman was already moving. Old habits, the lone vigilante operating ahead of support, died hard. He melted into shadows the Imperium's designers hadn't intended, his training making him functionally invisible in the low light. Behind him, he heard Agatha curse. Then nothing. They were good enough not to compromise him with pursuit. Batman approached the junction from above, using corroded pipes as handholds. Below, 3 figures huddled around a chemical drum fire. At first glance, they looked human, malnourished, wearing rags, typical underhive scavengers. Then one turned, and Batman saw the truth. The man's arms ended in chitin-plated claws. His head was elongated, cranium swollen. When he smiled at something his companion said, Batman counted too many teeth. Genestealer hybrids. 3rd generation, maybe. Close enough to human to infiltrate. Alien enough to kill. Batman's hand moved to his bolt pistol. 1 shot, center mass, and the hybrid would explode. Quick. Efficient. Final. He hesitated. In Gotham, he would have dropped down, interrogated them, learned the cult's structure. He would have tracked them back to their base, dismantled the organization surgically. These hybrids might have information, locations, numbers, hierarchy, but they were also genetically enslaved. If Vale was right, they had no choice in their actions. They were victims and threats simultaneously. Batman's finger touched the trigger. The hybrid below laughed at something, a sound almost human. Then its companion peeled back its sleeve, revealing an arm covered in purple chitin plates. It gestured toward the depths of the underhive, speaking in a language Batman's translators struggled to parse. But the meaning was clear. They're coming. Soon. We feed the Star Children. Star Children. The Tyranids. Batman fired. The bolt round took the first hybrid in the chest, detonating on impact. The creature exploded in a spray of purple ichor and fragmented chitin. The second hybrid screamed, a sound that was part human anguish, part Xenos shriek, and charged. Batman put 2 rounds into its skull before it closed half the distance. The third ran. Batman's grapnel caught it mid-sprint, yanking it back. It thrashed, claws scrabbling at the cable. Batman descended, cowl sensors analyzing the creature. 40% Xenos DNA. Brain structure compromised by genetic rewrite. Language centers intact but subservient to psychic imperatives from somewhere below. Deeper in the underhive. The Patriarch. Had to be. The hybrid's eyes focused on Batman. Brother! It hissed through malformed vocal cords. "Join us! The four-armed Emperor waits in the darkness. He offers perfection, unity, purpose." Batman stared into those eyes and saw nothing human remaining. Whatever these people had been, they were gone. The Genestealer's genetic curse had rewritten them at a fundamental level. "Where?" Batman demanded. "Where is your patriarch?" The hybrid smiled with too many teeth. "Everywhere, nowhere. In the hearts of the faithful, we are legion. We are—" Batman snapped its neck. "Quick, clinical, necessary." He stood over the corpse, breathing hard. 3 kills in 30 seconds. No interrogation. No investigation. Just execution. Agatha emerged from the shadows behind him, bolter raised. She looked at the bodies, then at Batman. Clean kills. Efficient. "They were going to summon a Tyrannid fleet," Batman said, voice flat. "No time for questions." "No." Agatha lowered her weapon. "There wasn't." She was lying. There had been time. Batman had chosen speed over information because looking into that hybrid's eyes had shown him the truth. These weren't criminals who'd made bad choices. They were victims of biological warfare, rewritten into weapons, and weapons had to be destroyed. Batman retrieved his grapnel, wiping purple blood on the hybrid's rags. His hands were steady. That bothered him more than the shaking would have. "The Patriarch is deeper," he said. "We follow their trail." Kane and the stormtroopers joined them, sweeping the area for additional contacts. Sergeant Kane examined the corpses with professional detachment. "Third-generation hybrids. Cult's been active for at least 20 years to reach this stage. Could be thousands of them." "Then we find the source," Batman said. "And we end this." He'd crossed his line. 3 corpses proved it. But if crossing that line saved 17 billion lives, could he live with that math? He'd have to. Because the alternative was letting innocents die to preserve his principles. And Bruce Wayne had never let innocents die. Not in Gotham. Not here. They descended deeper. The Underhive swallowed them like a throat, each level more degraded than the last. Sublevel 120 was inhabited by desperate refugees. Sublevel 150 was gang territory, marked by crude graffiti and corpses left as warnings. Below 200, civilization ended. Batman's auspex painted the environment in overlays of structural decay and biological contamination. The air was thick with spores and chemical runoff. Water dripped from pipes that hadn't been maintained in centuries. In Gotham's worst neighborhoods, at least the infrastructure functioned. Here, the Imperium had simply abandoned entire populations to rot. "Estimates put 50 million people living below official HAB zones," Agatha said, her voice filtered through her helmet's vox. "No imperial authority. No law except what gangs enforce. Perfect breeding ground for cults." Batman tracked heat signatures through the darkness. Hundreds of people clustered in makeshift shelters, burning toxic waste for warmth. Children, actual children, played in corridors filled with industrial runoff. The Imperium preached about the Emperor's divine protection, yet it let its own citizens live like this. "Why doesn't the Imperium provide basic services down here?" Batman asked. Kane answered without emotion. "Resource allocation. The Imperium spans 1,000,000 worlds, Inquisitor. Every Aquila spent on Underhive infrastructure is one not spent on warships, ammunition, or feeding soldiers. The calculus is simple. These people contribute nothing. Therefore, they receive nothing. They're human beings. They're numbers on a ledger." Kane's helmet turned toward him. "Cold logic, sir. But it's kept humanity alive for 10,000 years. Sentiment gets planets killed." Batman's jaw clenched behind his cowl. In Gotham, he'd fought against this exact mindset. The utilitarian calculus that wrote off Crime Alley because saving it was too expensive. He'd proven, night after night, that individuals mattered, that every life had value. But Gotham was one city. The Imperium was a galaxy. Could his methods scale? Or was he clinging to principles that only worked in smaller contexts? "Contact," one of the stormtroopers whispered. "Multiple signatures, 200 meters, large concentration." Batman's auspex confirmed it. Dozens of heat signatures clustered around what appeared to be a structural weakness in the hive's foundation. A cavity, maybe, or a deliberately excavated space. "That's too many for a random gathering," Agatha said. "Cult meeting. Has to be." They approached in tactical formation, Kane's stormtroopers providing overlapping fields of fire, Agatha in the center with her bolter, Batman on point with sensors active. The corridor opened into a vast chamber that made Batman's detective instincts scream. It had been a water reclamation facility once. Now it was a temple. The walls were covered in crude artwork, four-armed figures radiating lines meant to suggest divine grace. Candles made from corpse fat flickered in alcoves, and in the center, gathered around a pool of stagnant water, were the faithful. Batman counted 47 humans and hybrids. Some were first generation, barely showing mutations, passing for baseline human. Others were third and fourth generation. Their forms twisted into Xenos configurations. They knelt in worship, chanting in a language his translator identified as corrupted Low Gothic, mixed with tyrannid pheromone communication. And at the pool's edge, leading the service, was something worse. The Magus stood 7 feet tall, robed in stolen ecclesiarchy vestments, defiled with Xenos glyphs. Its head was elongated, cranium grotesquely swollen. 4 arms gestured in patterns that made Batman's eyes hurt. When it spoke, its voice carried psychic weight that pressed against his mind like cold fingers. "Children of the Star," the Magus intoned, "the day of ascension approaches. Soon our true family descends from the void. Soon we are made whole in their embrace. Soon this rotting Imperium is cleansed in holy consumption." The congregation responded in unison. "We are the infection. We are the cure." Batman's hand moved to his bolt pistol. One shot would kill the Magus. The cult would fracture without its psychic leader. But 47 hostiles in an enclosed space, with his team outnumbered nearly 10-1. "We need to fall back," Kane whispered. "Call in Militarum support. Clear the chamber with flamers and—" "No," Batman said. "By the time reinforcements arrive, they'll scatter. We end this now." "Inquisitor, that's—" Batman was already moving. He'd analyzed the chamber's structure, identified the support columns, calculated blast patterns. 3 breaching charges placed correctly would bring the ceiling down on the congregation. Brutal, efficient, final. He dropped from their observation point, using his grapnel to swing silently across the chamber's upper reaches. Below, the cultists continued their worship, oblivious. Batman placed the first charge on a corroded support column, the adhesive making barely a whisper. Then, a child looked up. Batman froze. The girl couldn't have been more than 8, her face half covered by purple chitin growths. She stared at him with eyes that held human fear and Xenos instinct in equal measure. For 3 heartbeats, neither moved. Then she screamed. The congregation exploded into motion. Hybrids grabbed improvised weapons. Industrial tools converted to clubs, rusted blades, even bare claws. The Magus's head snapped toward Batman, its psychic presence slamming into his mind like a fist. "You are alone, detective. You cannot save them. You cannot save yourself. Embrace the Star, children. Embrace perfection." Batman's vision blurred. The psychic assault was unlike anything he'd experienced. Not physical force, but cognitive attack, trying to rewrite his thoughts, his loyalties, his identity. He felt the compulsion to kneel, to accept the 4-armed god, to join the unity the cult offered. He crushed the intrusion with techniques learned from facing Scarecrow's fear gas. Compartmentalize. Breathe. Find the center that fear cannot touch. Now! Batman shouted. Hell gunfire lanced from the observation point. 3 cultists exploded in superheated plasma. Agatha's bolter roared, each round detonating a hybrid in sprays of purple ichor. The stormtroopers laid down suppressive fire with military precision. Batman dropped into the chaos, cape spreading to confuse targeting. A hybrid charged him. 4th generation, more Xenos than human. He sidestepped its claws, planted a boot in its knee joint, and put a bolt round through its skull as it fell. 2 more converged from his flanks. Batman's grapnel caught one, yanked it into the other. They tumbled in a tangle of limbs and chitin. He threw a smoke pellet, Imperial manufacture, cruder than his originals but functional, and disappeared into the resulting cloud. The cultists fired blindly. Bullets ricocheted off stone. Batman moved through the smoke like a predator, targeting hybrids with mechanical efficiency. Center mass, controlled pairs, no wasted ammunition. A 1st-generation hybrid lunged from the smoke, a woman whose only visible mutation was extra fingers. She carried a rusted pipe, swinging it with desperate strength. Batman blocked with his armored forearm, swept her legs, and hesitated. She looked almost human, terrified, crying. "Please," she gasped. "The Emperor's light! It burns! We only wanted to belong!" The Magus's psychic voice cut through the chamber. "Kill the intruder. Feed him to the Patriarch. His flesh will nourish our ascension." The woman's expression shifted. Fear became fanatical rage. She lunged again, fingers reaching for Batman's throat. He shot her. Had to. The smoke cleared. Bodies littered the temple floor. The surviving cultists retreated toward the pool, forming a defensive ring around the Magus. Batman counted 19 left, including the child who'd spotted him. "Surrender," Batman said, voice modulated through his cowl to carry command. "You're surrounded. Drop your weapons." The Magus laughed. A sound like breaking glass filtered through inhuman vocal cords. "Surrender? To the corpse Emperor's slave? We are already victorious, Detective. Even now the fleet approaches. Even now worlds scream as they're consumed. You cannot stop the Star Children's hunger." "Where's the Patriarch?" Batman demanded. "Everywhere. Nowhere. In the hearts of the faithful." The Magus's 4 arms spread wide. "You've killed our bodies, but our purpose lives. We are inevitable." Kane appeared at Batman's shoulder, Hellgun trained on the Magus. "Inquisitor, the structural charges." "I know." Batman's finger rested on the detonator. 1 button press, and the ceiling would collapse. Every cultist would die. The temple would be buried. The cult decapitated. And 19 people, some barely mutated, some like the crying woman, some like the terrified child, would be crushed under tons of stone. "Do it," Agatha urged. "Every second you hesitate, they're calling for reinforcements. Psychic summons the auspex can't detect." Batman looked at the child. She clutched a crude doll made from synthetic fiber and wire. Her human eye held the same fear he'd seen in crime alley orphans. Her Xenos eye held something else. Hunger, obedience, purpose programmed at a genetic level. Could she be saved? Was there enough humanity left to redeem? Or was he seeing what he wanted to see, not what was actually there? The Magus's psychic voice whispered, "You hesitate because you still believe in redemption. But there is no redemption here, Detective. Only consumption. Only unity. Only—" Batman pressed the detonator. The charges detonated simultaneously. Support columns shattered. The ceiling groaned, then fell. Cultists screamed. Sounds that mixed human terror and Xeno shrieks. Batman's grapnel yanked him backward as tons of corroded metal and stone crashed down. Dust filled the chamber. Silence followed. Batman stood at the observation point, staring at the rubble. Somewhere beneath it were 47 bodies. Somewhere in that mass grave was a child clutching a doll. "Clean work," Kane said, already moving toward extraction. "Cult's been decapitated. Without the Magus, the scattered hybrids will be easier to hunt. Agatha approached Batman, her crimson armor gray with dust. You did what was necessary. Did I? Batman's voice was hollow. That child was 40% Xenos DNA, Agatha said flatly. Her brain was being rewritten by psychic imperatives. In another year, she'd have been completely subsumed. You didn't kill a child, Inquisitor. You killed a weapon shaped like one. Batman knew she was right. He'd analyzed the hybrid genetics, seen the neurological changes. There was no cure, no reversal, no saving them. But knowing didn't make it easier. In Gotham, he'd saved children from monsters. Here, he'd killed children who were becoming monsters. The difference felt like damnation. We still need to find the Patriarch, Batman said, voice controlled through sheer willpower. The Magus said the cult spans further than this cell. Then we hunt, Kane replied. Standard inquisitorial operation. We track the survivors, follow them to the next gathering, and repeat until the infestation is purged. Batman's Auspex was already tracking heat signatures fleeing through the Underhive's tunnels. 6 survivors, moving fast. They'd regroup somewhere, warn others, maybe summon help. Move out, Batman ordered. We're not done. They pursued the survivors through kilometers of darkness. Batman's mind worked mechanically. Analyze patterns, predict movements, anticipate ambushes. Don't think about the child. Don't think about the crying woman. Don't think about the line you've crossed. Just hunt. Because if he stopped hunting, he'd have to confront what he'd become, and Bruce Wayne wasn't ready for that reckoning. Not yet. The survivors led them deeper than Batman thought possible. Sub-level 300, then 400. The Auspex struggled to maintain coherent readings. The Hive's lower reaches were geological nightmares where the original structure had merged with natural cave systems and forgotten mining operations. They'd been pursuing for 6 hours when Kane called a halt. Inquisitor, we're beyond sustainable pursuit. No communications with the surface. Limited ammunition. If we encounter significant resistance... We're close, Batman interrupted, studying his Auspex. The 6 signatures had stopped moving, converging with dozens of others. They're gathering. This could be the main nest. Or a trap, Agatha said. Her armor's power pack was reading at 60%. They'd burned through resources faster than planned. We should mark this location, extract, and return with proper support. A full company of Militarum, maybe even a Space Marine kill team if the Death Watch can be petitioned. Batman weighed the options. The tactical part of his mind, honed by years of working with the Justice League, agreed with Agatha. They were overextended, undersupplied, operating in hostile territory without support. But the detective in him knew that cults didn't gather without reason. Whatever was happening ahead was significant, time-sensitive. If they extracted now, the cult would scatter, go deeper, become exponentially harder to root out. We scout ahead, Batman decided. Observation only. If it's more than we can handle, we mark it and fall back. Kane's helmet tilted in what might have been resignation. Your authority, sir. But if this goes wrong, we're a week's travel from reinforcement. They moved forward in tactical silence. The corridor opened into a chasm that made Batman's breath catch. The Auspex called it a mining pit, but it was large enough to swallow Gotham's financial district. Crude platforms and walkways crisscrossed the open space, connected by chains and corroded cables. At the bottom, perhaps 2 kilometers down, lights flickered. Emperor's Mercy, Agatha whispered. It's a city. She was right. The chasm floor was covered in structures, hab blocks built from scrap metal, workshops powered by stolen generators, even something resembling a marketplace. Thousands of heat signatures moved through the improvised settlement. This isn't just a cult, Batman said, magnifying his cowl's vision. This is a population, refugees, workers. Entire families living outside Imperial authority. All of them infected? Kane asked. Batman cycled through sensor modes. Thermal, electromagnetic, genetic markers when targets were close enough. What he found chilled him. Mixed population, he reported. Maybe 30% showing hybrid characteristics. The rest appear baseline human. They're living together. Integrated. Impossible, Agatha said. Genestealer cults are parasitic. They don't coexist. They infiltrate, corrupt, and eventually consume. Then this is different. Batman's detective mind was already assembling the pattern. The cult didn't invade an existing population. It grew from one. These people have lived together for generations. The infected are their children, grandchildren. They don't see them as monsters. They see them as family. The implications were staggering and horrifying. On the surface, the Imperium preached genetic purity and xenophobic paranoia. Down here, 50,000 people had apparently decided that family mattered more than species. Contact, one of the stormtroopers whispered. Elevated platform, 3 o'clock. Batman's sensors confirmed it. A single figure standing on an observation platform overlooking the settlement. Tall, robed, radiating psychic pressure that made his cowl's warp detection systems scream warnings. Another Magus, or something worse. I'm going in, Batman said. Close observation. If I'm compromised, we extract or die trying, Kane finished. Standard procedure. Batman grappled to the platform, approaching from below and behind. His stealth training, perfected over decades in Gotham, made him functionally invisible. The figure didn't turn as Batman crept closer. It was a woman. Human, or mostly so. Her arms were normal, her face beautiful despite being etched with age. But her eyes glowed with dim purple bioluminescence, and when she breathed, the air shimmered with psychic energy. I know you're there, Inquisitor, she said without turning. Her voice was refined, educated. I felt you the moment you entered our sanctuary. A mind so disciplined, so controlled. It burns like a star in the darkness. Batman rose from concealment, bolt pistol aimed at center mass. Who are you? I am called Grandmother by those who dwell here. My given name was Celestine Varric, once of Hive Primus Upper Spire, before I was cast down for the sin of bearing a child touched by the Star God's blessing. She turned, smiling gently. And you are the detective. The one who collapsed the temple above, who killed 47 of my children. Batman's finger rested on the trigger. Your children were infected, controlled by Xenos influence. Were they? Grandmother gestured toward the settlement below. Look at them, Inquisitor. Truly look. Do they appear enslaved? Controlled? Or do they appear as what they are? Families trying to survive in a galaxy that wants them dead. Batman's sensors swept the settlement. He saw children playing, merchants haggling, workers repairing habitation units. And yes, he saw hybrids among them. But they moved freely, interacted naturally, showed no signs of psychic domination. The Genestealer kiss rewrites genetic code, Batman said. Creates loyalty to the hive mind. They're not free. They're programmed. Are they? Or is that what the Imperium tells you to justify genocide? Grandmother's eyes held sadness, not anger. Yes, the kiss changes us. But the Imperium changes its people too. With propaganda, with indoctrination, with lobotomization when citizens think too much. Which is the greater slavery, Inquisitor? Genetic imperatives that bind families together, or ideological imperatives that demand we murder our own children for being different? Batman's jaw tightened. The Genestealers summon Tyranid fleets. They doom entire worlds. Do they? Or do the Tyranids come regardless, and the hybrid population simply recognize their makers? Grandmother approached slowly, hands visible and empty. I've lived here 40 years, Inquisitor. I've watched 3 generations grow. Not once have we summoned anything. Not once have we attacked the Imperium unprovoked. We simply want to exist, to live, to be left alone. The magus in the temple spoke of ascension, of consuming the Imperium. Kelvin was young, zealous. He believed the myths our grandparents told us, that someday gods from the stars would descend and make us whole. Grandmother's expression hardened. He was wrong. There are no gods coming, only predators. The Tyranids don't ascend us. They devour us like everything else. I've known this for years. But the young need hope, even false hope, to survive this hell. Batman's tactical computer was running probability analyses. Was she lying? The auspex detected no deception markers, but psychic manipulation could fool sensors. Was this genuine ignorance or manipulation to make him lower his guard? You're still infected, Batman said. Your genetic code has been compromised. That makes you a vector for what? For the crime of biology? Grandmother's voice cracked. We didn't choose this, Inquisitor. My grandmother was kissed by something in the deep mines, a creature that had lived in darkness for millennia. She bore hybrid children. Those children were my parents. I was born this way, as were my children and theirs. We are what we are through no choice of our own. She gestured to the settlement. These people are refugees from the upper hives, mutants, abhumans, those who failed genetic purity tests, those who questioned the ecclesiarchy, those whose only crime was being different. We've built something here, Inquisitor. Not perfect, not pure, but ours, and you want to destroy it because we carry the wrong genes. Batman stared at the settlement, at the children playing, at the families, at the humans and hybrids living together in circumstances the Imperium had created through its own brutal abandonment. In Gotham, he'd fought against systems that criminalized poverty, that punished people for circumstances beyond their control. He'd defended Crime Alley's residents against those who called them parasites worthy only of extermination. This was the same logic, scaled to galactic proportions. The Inquisition has determined that genestealer infection is irredeemable, Batman said, but his voice lacked conviction. The Inquisition also determined that my 5-year-old granddaughter deserved execution for having purple eyes. Grandmother's hands trembled. Tell me! Detective, the child you killed in the temple, did she attack you? Did she threaten anyone? Or did she simply exist in the wrong place at the wrong time? Batman said nothing. The memory was acid in his mind. You killed her because someone told you she was a monster. But did you verify that claim? Did you investigate? Or did you simply obey? Grandmother's psychic presence intensified. You call yourself a detective. Then detect this. Are we monsters because of what we are, or because of what you've been told we are? Behind Batman, his calm bead crackled. Agatha's voice. Inquisitor, your vitals are spiking. Psychic influence detected. Recommend immediate extraction. Batman's hand hovered near the detonator for a breaching charge. One explosion. The platform would collapse. Grandmother would fall 2 kilometers. The settlement would lose its leader, and 50,000 people, guilty only of genetics, would be leaderless when the Inquisition inevitably returned in force. I need time to think, Batman said. Time is what we've never had. Grandmother smiled sadly. The Imperium doesn't grant stays of execution for contemplation. You'll return with armies, flamers, and virus bombs. You'll sterilize this place and call it righteous. I'm not like them. Aren't you? You wear their symbol. You wield their authority. You've already killed dozens of us. Her eyes held no accusation, only grief. Perhaps you're different. Perhaps you genuinely believe in justice. But in the end, you'll do what the Imperium demands, because that's what survival requires. Batman's calm crackled again. Inquisitor, new contacts. Multiple signatures approaching from the settlement. We need to move, now! Batman looked down. Dozens of heat signatures were ascending the walkways toward his position, armed, moving with military precision. They're coming to defend me, Grandmother said. Not because I command them, because they choose to. That's the difference between us and the Imperium, Inquisitor. We offer choice. You offer obedience. Batman grappled backward, rejoining his team. The settlement's defenders were spreading out, flanking maneuvers evident in their movement patterns. Professional, trained. We're leaving, Batman ordered. Fall back to extraction point. Sir, the cult, Kane began, is more complicated than reported. We need intelligence before action. Batman was already moving, his team following. Mark this location. We'll return. As they retreated through the Underhive, Batman's mind churned. Everything he'd been told about Genestealer cults suggested mindless infestation. What he'd seen suggested something far more complex. A population of refugees, some infected, some not, living together because the Imperium had given them no alternative. Were they innocent? Were they threats? Was Grandmother lying? Was the Imperium? Batman had built his career on investigating before judging, on gathering evidence before acting. But the Imperium's doctrine was clear. Shoot first, burn the evidence, ask no questions. He'd gone along with it because Vale had convinced him the threats were existential. But what if the Imperium itself was the threat, creating the very monsters it claimed to fight? Inquisitor, Agatha said as they reached safer territory. What happened back there? You had the target. You could have neutralized her. I needed information, Batman said. You hesitated, she corrected. The same way you hesitated before collapsing the temple. You're still thinking like a detective in a world that requires executioners. Batman said nothing. Because she was right. And he didn't know how to reconcile what he'd been with what this galaxy demanded. The righteous endeavor felt like a prison upon return. Batman spent 3 days in his quarters, analyzing data, reviewing sensor logs, cross-referencing Imperial records on Genestealer behavior. The evidence was contradictory, or deliberately obscured. Official inquisitorial doctrine. All hybrids are psychically enslaved to the Patriarch. Immediate execution required. No exceptions. But the settlement he'd observed showed autonomous behavior, decision-making, genuine community bonds. Either the doctrine was oversimplified or something else was happening. On the 4th day, Vale summoned him. The Inquisitor Lord's private chamber was a museum of horrors. Shelves held Zeno's artifacts sealed behind stasis fields. A bound demon weapon hung on the wall, still whispering promises in a language that hurt to hear. Vale sat behind a desk carved from a single piece of obsidian, reviewing data slates with his bionic eye. Your report, Vale said without preamble, is concerning. Batman stood at attention, playing the role expected. The cult is larger and more organized than initial intelligence suggested. Purging it will require significant resources. That's not what concerns me. Vale set down the slate. Sister Agatha's report indicates you had multiple opportunities to eliminate high-value targets. You declined. You hesitated. You engaged in conversation with a known Magus-class psyker. His organic eye fixed on Batman. Explain. I was gathering intelligence. You were sympathizing. Vale's voice was cold. The grandmother figure. Her rhetoric about choice and family. You found it compelling. Batman's expression remained neutral behind his cowl, but Vale was perceptive. Dangerously so. I found it inconsistent with established cult behavior, Batman said carefully. The official doctrine states hybrids are psychically dominated. What I observed suggested autonomous decision-making. If the doctrine is inaccurate, our strategies need adjustment. The doctrine, Vale said, rising from his chair, is built on 10,000 years of combat data, millions of encounters across thousands of worlds. Yes, hybrids show apparent autonomy. They laugh, they love, they choose. But those choices are shaped by genetic imperatives implanted by the patriarch. They cannot be trusted because their loyalty is biological, not ideological. Then they're victims. They're weapons. Vale approached, his presence commanding. A gun doesn't choose to fire, Knight. A virus doesn't choose to spread. Genestealer hybrids are biological weapons deployed by the tyrannid hive mind across millennia. The fact that they don't understand this doesn't make them less dangerous. Batman met his gaze. The settlement I observed had baseline humans living alongside hybrids, integrated families. If the infection were truly controlling, wouldn't the hybrids have infected or killed the pure strain humans? They're being farmed, Vale said bluntly. Kept alive to provide genetic diversity for future generations, or as food reserves when resources run low, or as shields when the Inquisition arrives. Don't mistake the Predator's patience for mercy. You're speculating. I'm applying pattern recognition across millennia of data. Vale returned to his desk, pulling up a hololith. Images appeared. Worlds consumed by tyrannids, their populations devoured after genestealer cults had weakened planetary defenses. Every time, the pattern is the same. Cults establish in shadows. They grow. They appear peaceful, even sympathetic. Then the hive fleet arrives, and billions die screaming as they're dissolved into biomass. The images were horrifying. Entire civilizations reduced to genetic material, cities stripped to bedrock, oceans boiled to extract biological compounds. How long? Batman asked. Between cult establishment and fleet arrival? Varies. Decades. Centuries. The tyrannids operate on timescales that make human patience look like impatience. Vale dismissed the hololith. But the end is inevitable. The cult is the beacon. Whether they know it or not, they're calling the swarm. Batman processed this. If Vale was correct, then Grandmother's settlement, innocent or not, was dooming Scintilla Magnus. 17 billion lives in exchange for 50,000 refugees who might not even understand the threat they posed. The trolley problem again. Kill the few to save the many. What are my orders? Batman asked. Vale studied him for a long moment. You're conflicted. I can see it. The detective in you wants to investigate further, to find the perfect solution where everyone can be saved. But this galaxy doesn't offer perfect solutions, Knight. Only terrible choices and worse alternatives. I'm aware. Are you? Vale leaned forward. Because from where I stand, you're still clinging to principles from a gentler age. No-kill rules, presumption of innocence, investigation before execution. Those principles are luxuries, Knight. The 41st millennium cannot afford luxury. Batman's hands curled into fists. So I should just execute 50,000 people on suspicion? On certainty. The pattern is documented. The outcome is inevitable. Vale's voice softened fractionally. I understand your reluctance, truly. When I was younger, I questioned these protocols too. I thought the Inquisition was monstrous, that there had to be better ways. Then I watched an entire hive fall because I delayed action, hoping for a perfect solution. 3 billion dead. Their blood on my hands because I hesitated. The confession hung in the air between them. You're trying to be just, Vale continued. That's admirable. But justice is a luxury of stable civilizations. The Imperium isn't stable. It's a corpse shambling forward through momentum and desperation. We don't have the resources for justice, only triage. Save who we can, sacrifice who we must, and accept that we're damned either way. Batman stared at the Inquisitor Lord. Vale wasn't a monster. He was a man who'd made terrible choices and built a philosophy to live with them. The same trap that had consumed so many, justifying atrocity through accumulated trauma. "I need to return to the settlement," Batman said. "Verify the threat assessment personally." "Denied. You're compromised. Emotionally invested. The next team will handle purification. The next team will massacre refugees without understanding what they're dealing with." "Yes." Vale's voice was iron. "Because that's what the situation requires. Scintilla Magnus has 17 billion souls. The cult, by your count, numbers 50,000. The calculus is simple." Batman's tactical computer ran the numbers. Vale was right. Purely by utilitarian logic, sacrificing 50,000 to save 17 billion was obvious. But Batman had never operated on pure logic. He operated on principle, on the belief that every life had value, that shortcuts led to corruption, that means mattered as much as ends. "I'm going back," Batman said. "With or without authorization." Vale's bionic eye whirred. That would be insubordination. Grounds for immediate execution or mind scrubbing. "Then execute me. But I won't abandon an investigation halfway through because the answers might be inconvenient." Silence stretched between them. Vale's hand rested on his plasma pistol. One shot would end Batman's crusade before it truly began. Then Vale laughed. A genuine sound, unexpected and bitter. "Emperor's teeth. You really are incorruptible, aren't you? Thrown into a nightmare galaxy, given every reason to compromise, and you still cling to your principles like they're sacred." He shook his head. "You're either the greatest fool I've ever met, or something this Imperium desperately needs. Which do you think?" "I think you're both." Vale removed his hand from the pistol. "Very well. You have 1 week. Return to the settlement. Verify the threat level. Find evidence that convinces me they're not a Tyranid beacon. But Knight, if you find nothing, if they truly are what doctrine says they are, you will execute the purge order yourself. Personally, no delegation, no abstraction. You will look them in the eyes and pull the trigger. And if I find they're innocent, then we'll have to rewrite 10,000 years of protocol. Which should be interesting." Vale pulled up a tactical map. "You'll go alone. No kill team. No support. If they kill you, it proves their hostility. If they don't, perhaps there's something worth investigating." Batman understood the test. Vale was putting him in maximum danger to see if his principles were convictions or naivety. If the cult was truly hostile, Batman would die. If they weren't, he might survive to prove it. "When do I leave?" "Immediately. The transport will drop you at the Underhive access point. After that, you're on your own." Vale handed him a data slate. "This contains gene sequencing equipment. Analyze hybrid DNA. Prove their loyalty isn't biologically determined. That's your burden of proof." Batman took the slate. "And if I prove it? Then we'll have to confront the possibility that the Imperium has been committing genocide against refugees for millennia." Vale's expression was unreadable. "Pray you're wrong, Knight. Because if you're right, the moral implications will make your conscience look like a minor concern." 6 hours later, Batman descended into the Underhive alone. No backup, no extraction plan. Just the equipment on his belt and the principles in his heart. The settlement was exactly where he'd left it. Thousands of heat signatures moving through their daily routines. No apparent awareness that an Inquisitor had returned. Batman activated his cowl's Voxcaster, broadcasting on general frequencies. "This is Inquisitor Knight. I'm entering your settlement under investigative authority. I'm armed but not hostile. I seek conversation with the one called Grandmother." Silence. Then a voice crackled back. Young, female, suspicious. "You killed my brother in the temple. Why should we trust you?" "Because I'm here alone. If I wanted you dead, I'd have called in orbital bombardment. Instead, I'm requesting dialogue." More silence. Then, "Proceed to the central plaza, unarmed, or we fill you with bullets." Batman descended the walkways, hands visible, weapons conspicuously mag-locked to his armor. Dozens of eyes watched from shadows. He counted at least 40 firearms tracking his movement. Primitive slug throwers mostly, but lethal enough. The central plaza was a repurposed ore processing platform. Hundreds of people gathered, human and hybrid, young and old. They parted as Grandmother emerged from the crowd, flanked by bodyguards whose hybrid strength was obvious in their augmented physiques. "You returned," she said, surprise evident. "I expected armies, not apologies." "I'm not here to apologize. I'm here to investigate." Batman produced the gene sequencing equipment. "I need to test hybrid DNA. Determine if your loyalty is biologically determined or freely chosen." Grandmother's eyes narrowed. "And if you determine we're slaves to our genetics, you'll justify our extermination with clean conscience?" "If I determine your threats, I'll act accordingly, but I won't condemn you without evidence." "How merciful." Her voice dripped with bitterness. "The Imperium finally sends an Inquisitor who believes in trials. Pity it took 40,000 years." She extended her arm. "Test me. Prove your theories. But know this, Detective. Whatever you find, it won't change what we are. We're survivors. We're family. And we will not go quietly into extinction." Batman activated the sequencer, pressing it against her skin. The device hummed, analyzing genetic markers, mapping psychic resonance patterns, checking for tyrannid control structures. The results would determine whether 50,000 people lived or died, and whether Bruce Wayne's soul survived the 41st Millennium. The gene sequencer took 3 hours to complete its analysis. During that time, Grandmother invited Batman into her dwelling, a hab unit constructed from salvaged materials, surprisingly comfortable despite the poverty. She served him recaf, bitter and synthetic, but drinkable. "You don't have to wait with me," Batman said, watching the device's progress bar crawl forward. "Yes, I do." Grandmother sat across from him, her luminescent eyes reflecting the sequencer's display. "You're about to determine whether my grandchildren live or die. The least I can do is bear witness." Batman studied her. Up close, the hybrid characteristics were more evident. Bone structure slightly wrong, musculature denser than baseline human, neural patterns showing enhancement. But her eyes held intelligence, sadness, determination, human qualities, regardless of genetics. "Tell me how it started," Batman said. "The truth." Grandmother was silent for a moment. Then, "My grandmother, Celestine I, worked in the deep mines. Hive Primus runs deeper than most realize. Kilometers of excavation, chasing ore veins into planetary crust. She was a drilling operator, 60 years old, ready to retire. Then her crew broke through into something old." "Old?" "Pre-imperial, maybe pre-human." Grandmother's voice took on a storyteller's cadence. "A chamber that shouldn't exist, carved from living rock with precision beyond our technology. And inside, hibernating, was a creature. The Patriarch. We call it the Sleeper. It had been there for millennia, sealed away by civilizations long extinct. My grandmother's crew woke it accidentally. It killed 3 workers before they could react. But it didn't kill her. It kissed her. Genetic transfer. Then it disappeared back into darkness, deeper than our equipment could follow." Batman's detective instincts assembled the timeline. She was infected. Bore hybrid children. Your parents. Yes, she tried to hide it at first, but hybrid traits manifest obviously by second generation. My father had extra fingers. My mother's eyes glowed. The ecclesiarchy discovered them during a routine genetic purity screening, ordered execution. But they escaped. My grandfather, baseline human, fiercely loyal, helped them flee into the underhive, sacrificed his own life buying them time. Grandmother's expression hardened. The Imperium killed him for the crime of loving his wife, regardless of what she'd become. Batman filed that away. One more piece of the Imperium's brutality. One more life destroyed by uncompromising dogma. Your parents built the settlement? They found it. This chasm was an old mining operation, abandoned when the ore ran out. Other refugees had already settled here. Mutants, abhumans, failed workers discarded by the Imperium's efficient cruelty. My parents integrated, had children, built something resembling community. Grandmother gestured around them. 4 generations later, this is home. We're not a cult, Inquisitor. We're a refugee camp. But you have magooses, psychic powers, organizational structure that matches Genestealer cult patterns. Because we've learned to survive! Yes, some of us develop psychic sensitivity, side effect of the genetic modifications. Yes, we organize for mutual defense against gangs and abhuman hunters. Yes, we tell stories about the sleeper, building mythology to give our children hope. Her voice rose. But none of that makes us slaves. We're adapting to circumstances the Imperium created. The sequencer beeped. Analysis complete. Batman stared at the display, reading results that contradicted everything he'd been told. Subject, Celestine Varak, grandmother. Genetic markers, 43% Xenos deviation from baseline human. Tyranid markers confirmed. Enhanced musculature, improved neural processing, extended lifespan, psychic sensitivity, psychic resonance, present, low-level broadcast capability, capable of receiving Tyranid hive mind signals if in range. Control structures, none detected. Batman read that line 3 times, none detected. The genetic modifications were present. The Tyranid kiss had rewritten her at a fundamental level. But there was no evidence of psychic domination. No biological imperatives forcing loyalty, no hive mind control. Impossible, Batman whispered. Is it? Grandmother leaned forward. Or is it exactly what I've been telling you? The kiss changes us physically, but it doesn't enslave us. We're hybrids, yes, but we're still human where it matters. In our minds, our choices, our souls, if you believe in such things. Batman's tactical computer was running probability analyses, cross-referencing the data with Imperial doctrine. The results were disturbing. Imperial records showed thousands of Genestealer cult purges, millions of hybrids executed. But how many of those cults had actually been investigated? How many had been tested for psychic domination before being condemned? The pattern was obvious. The Imperium assumed all hybrids were controlled, justified genocide on that assumption, and never bothered verifying because the targets were already dead. The hive mind, Batman said. You mentioned receiving signals if in range. What does that mean? Grandmother's expression darkened. Sometimes, in my dreams, I feel something vast, hungry, cold. It's far away, light years distant, but it calls, not with words, with intent. The desire to consume, to grow, to spread. It terrifies me. Does it control you? No. It's like hearing someone shout in a language you don't speak. You know sound is happening, but it carries no meaning, no compulsion. Just awareness that something out there wants to use us. She met his eyes. We resist it, Inquisitor. Every day. Every generation. We teach our children to block out the call, to remain human despite what we've become. Batman believed her. The sequencer data supported it. Psychic sensitivity without control structures meant they could detect the hive mind without being dominated by it. They were receivers, not slaves. But the Inquisition believes you'll summon a Tyranid fleet. We can't summon what we refuse to call. Grandmother's voice was firm. Yes, If we opened ourselves to the hive mind signal, we might serve as a beacon, but we don't. We won't. We'd rather die than doom this world. Batman stood, pacing the small hab unit. The evidence was clear. This settlement wasn't a tyrannid vanguard. It was a population of refugees, some genetically modified, living in circumstances the Imperium had created through its own abandonment and brutality. Executing them would be genocide, pure and simple. But Vale's words echoed. Prove they're not a beacon. Prove the pattern won't repeat. I need to test others, Batman said. Verify this isn't unique to you, and I need to understand the sleeper, the original patriarch. Where is it? Grandmother's expression shifted to something like fear. We don't know. After it infected my grandmother, it disappeared into the deep mining shafts. We've sent expeditions, trying to understand it, contain it, maybe even kill it. None returned. How deep? Kilometers. Beyond any infrastructure. Into natural cave systems that connect to the planetary core. If the sleeper still lives, it's in darkness so complete that light itself is forgotten. Batman's tactical computer painted a picture. A Genestealer patriarch, alone, possibly hibernating, deep beneath the hive. The original source of infection. If it was still alive, still active, it could theoretically be calling the hive fleet without the settlement's knowledge. I need to find it, Batman said. Kill it, if possible. Eliminate the beacon at its source. You'll die, Grandmother said flatly. Every expedition we've sent into those depths has failed. Even our strongest hybrids, with their enhanced senses and strength. You're baseline human. You won't last an hour. I'm equipped for this. Batman gestured to his cowl, his armor, the tools at his belt. And I'm not just human. I'm a detective who's survived worse than darkness. It was bravado. He knew that. Gotham's sewers were civilization compared to what Grandmother described. But if he could eliminate the Patriarch, prove the settlement wasn't a beacon, he could save 50,000 lives. And maybe prove that the Imperium's doctrine was wrong. That genocide wasn't inevitable. That investigation and precision could replace the blunt instrument of orbital bombardment. I'll guide you as far as our scouts have mapped, Grandmother said. After that, you're in the unknown. If you die down there, I'll tell your Inquisitor friends you were killed by the cult. Better they blame us for your death than discover what you were truly attempting. Why would you protect my mission? Because if you succeed, you'll prove we're not monsters. And maybe, just maybe, that will buy my grandchildren a future. She stood, extending a hand. You're the first Inquisitor who bothered to ask questions instead of firing guns. That deserves better than betrayal. Batman took her hand. Her grip was stronger than human, but the gesture was universal. Gather your strongest hybrids, he said. I'll need guides, guards, and someone who understands tyrannid biology. We leave in 1 hour. Grandmother nodded. You're either the bravest fool I've met, or the first truly righteous Inquisitor in millennia. Maybe both, Batman said, because Bruce Wayne had never backed down from impossible odds, and he wasn't about to start now. The descent team assembled in the plaza. 6 hybrids, 4th and 5th generation. Their Xenos traits obvious, but their loyalty, according to the sequencer, entirely their own. They carried primitive weapons, rebreathers for toxic atmospheres, and climbing equipment scavenged from mining operations. Their leader was named Kyle, a young man whose 4 arms marked him as nearly full Genestealer hybrid. He looked at Batman with suspicion that bordered on hostility. You killed my sister in the temple, Kyle said. Grandmother says I should help you anyway. Explain why I shouldn't gut you here and save everyone the trouble. Batman met his gaze. Because I'm trying to prevent more deaths, including hers. I can't bring her back, but I can stop the Imperium from killing everyone else. That has to be enough. Kale's jaw tightened. Then he spat on the ground. It's not, but it'll have to do. Follow me, Inquisitor. Try to keep up. They descended into darkness deeper than Batman had ever experienced. Past the settlement's lowest levels, past abandoned mining operations, into natural caverns that predated human habitation. The walls were strange here, not cut by tools, but eroded by processes Batman couldn't identify. Organic almost, like the planet itself was alive. His auspex struggled. Interference from something below scrambled sensors. His cowl's low-light vision worked, but even enhanced optics couldn't pierce the absolute darkness ahead. "This is where our scouts stopped returning," Kale whispered. "Beyond this point, something waits. Something hungry." Batman activated a chemical light stick. Crude, but reliable. The green glow pushed back darkness perhaps 10 meters. Beyond that, nothing. "Then we're close," Batman said. "Stay alert. Watch for—" A scream echoed from the darkness. Then silence. One of the hybrids was gone. Simply vanished between one heartbeat and the next. "Contact!" Kale shouted. "Defensive formation!" But there was nothing to defend against. No visible enemy. Just darkness, and the growing certainty that they were being hunted. Batman's detective instincts screamed. This was a trap. They'd walked into the Patriarch's domain. And it had been waiting. The darkness moved. Batman's enhanced optics caught it first. A distortion in the shadows, something massive flowing along the cavern ceiling with impossible silence. His hand went to his bolt pistol, but before he could fire, another hybrid disappeared. One moment present, the next, gone. Not even a scream this time. "Spread out," Kale ordered, his 4 arms wielding makeshift weapons. "Don't cluster! It's hunting us like—" The Patriarch descended. Batman had seen the hololith images, read the Imperial classifications, but nothing prepared him for the reality. It was 8 feet of nightmare, 4 arms ending in scythe-like talons, a elongated skull housing intelligence that predated humanity, chitin plates covering musculature designed for killing. Its eyes were voids that absorbed light, and when it opened its mouth, row upon row of teeth glistened with digestive enzymes, but it was the psychic presence that truly horrified. The Patriarch's mind pressed against Batman's consciousness like a weight, trying to pry open his thoughts, rewrite his loyalties, make him prey. "Detective?" The voice was inside his head, multi-layered and ancient. "You seek to understand, to judge, but you are already mine. Your flesh remembers the primordial covenant. Surrender, join, become." Batman's mental disciplines, honed against Scarecrow, Mad Hatter, Poison Ivy, slammed into place. Compartmentalize, breathe, find the center that cannot be touched. "No," Batman said aloud, raising his bolt pistol. The Patriarch moved, faster than anything that size should move. It flowed across the cavern wall like liquid, closing the distance in heartbeats. Batman fired. Controlled pairs. "Center mass?" The bolt rounds detonated against chitin armor, blowing craters in the Patriarch's exoskeleton. It barely slowed. Kyle and the remaining hybrids opened fire with their primitive weapons. Slug rounds sparked off armor. A makeshift flamer bathed the Patriarch in chemical fire. It shrieked, a sound that was part animal, part psychic assault that made Batman's ears bleed. Then it counterattacked. One Talon eviscerated a hybrid in a spray of purple ichor. Another grabbed a second hybrid, lifting her effortlessly, and Batman watched in horror as the Patriarch's inner mouth extended, preparing the genetic kiss that would transform her into a mind-controlled thrall. Batman threw a cryo-grenade, Imperial manufacture, unreliable but effective. The device detonated at the Patriarch's feet, flash-freezing the immediate area. The creature's movement slowed, chitin cracking in the sudden cold. "Fall back!" Batman ordered. "Controlled retreat! Keep firing!" But the hybrids weren't soldiers. They were refugees with guns, facing the creature that had cursed their bloodline. Fear and rage warred in their expressions. "It killed our ancestors!" one hybrid shouted, charging with a mining drill converted to a weapon. "It doomed us! The Patriarch's talon removed his head with surgical precision. 3 hybrids remained. Kyle, a woman named Sarah, and a young hybrid who looked barely 16. They formed a defensive triangle around Batman, their enhanced strength and speed all that stood between him and evisceration. The Patriarch circled, psychic pressure intensifying. Batman could feel it now, the compulsion to kneel, to accept, to let the creature remake him. The genetic kiss promised unity, purpose, belonging. End the loneliness, end the isolation, join the family. For a moment, Batman almost understood why people surrendered to it. Then he remembered the child in the temple, the woman he'd shot, the 50,000 people whose lives depended on him proving this thing could be stopped. "Kyle," Batman said, voice steady despite bleeding ears and shaking hands. "The genetic link. Can you feel it? Can you communicate with it?" "It's screaming at us!" Kale shouted back. "Demanding submission! Trying to override our—" "Then scream back. Tell it the settlement won't be its beacon. Tell it you choose humanity over the hive." "It won't listen! It's— Do it!" Kale's eyes blazed with purple bioluminescence. His entire body tensed as he projected psychic resistance. The other 2 hybrids joined him, their combined mental defiance creating a barrier against the Patriarch's compulsion. The ancient creature recoiled, confused. For millennia, it had encountered only submission or ignorance, never organized resistance from its own genetic offspring. Batman used the distraction. His grapnel fired, anchoring to the cavern ceiling. He swung over the Patriarch's head, planting a breaching charge on its elongated skull mid-arc. The Patriarch's talon lashed out, catching Batman's cape. He felt the fabric tear, felt claws scrape across his carapace armor. Then he was falling, rolling, the charge's detonator in his hand. "Cover!" Batman shouted. He triggered the charge. The explosion was deafening in the enclosed space. The Patriarch's skull fractured, chitin plates blown apart, ichor spraying across stone. It shrieked, a sound that traveled on psychic and audible frequencies simultaneously. But it didn't die. The creature lunged, faster than before, driven by pain and rage. Its talons came for Batman's throat. He raised his armored forearm in a desperate block, felt the claws puncture ceramite and bite into flesh beneath. Pain, white-hot and immediate. Batman's combat drugs kicked in automatically, dulling the agony. But he could feel venom in the wounds, acidic, burning, designed to liquefy flesh for consumption. Then Kyle was there, all 4 arms grappling the Patriarch. His hybrid strength matched the ancient creature's barely. Sarah joined him, her enhanced musculature straining as she tried to pin one of the Patriarch's talons. "Kill it!" Kale screamed at Batman. "We can't hold it long!" Batman's wounded arm hung useless. His bolt pistol was in that hand, dropped when claws punctured through, but his left hand still worked. He drew his combat knife, a monomolecular blade courtesy of Mechanicus technology, and drove it into the Patriarch's fractured skull. Once, twice, 3 times. Each strike punched through damaged chitin, reaching the brain matter beneath. The Patriarch convulsed. Its psychic presence flared, a death scream that echoed through the warp itself. Batman felt it like a physical blow, driving him to his knees. The hybrids collapsed, their genetic connection to the creature making them vulnerable to its death throes. Then silence. The Patriarch's massive form went limp, ichor pooling beneath it. Batman knelt beside the corpse, breathing hard, blood streaming from his wounded arm. "Is it dead?" Sarah whispered. Batman checked for vital signs with his remaining functional auspex. No heartbeat, no brain activity, no psychic emanations. "It's dead." Kyle rose slowly, staring at the creature that had defined his people's existence. 4 generations. 4 generations we've lived in its shadow. Told stories about the sleeper in the deep. And it's just gone. Not just gone. Batman's detective mind was already assembling implications. Killed by hybrids who resisted its control. You proved you're not slaves. You chose to fight it instead of serving it. He activated his Voxcaster, broadcasting to Vale on encrypted inquisitorial channels. Inquisitor Knight to Lord Vale. Mission successful. Patriarch neutralized. Uploading genetic sequencer data and combat logs now. Static. Then Vale's voice, cold and professional. Confirmed receipt. Analysis will take several hours. What's your status? Wounded but mobile. The hybrid refugees assisted in the kill. They demonstrated autonomous resistance to psychic domination, requesting reassessment of purge order. More static. Batman could almost hear Vale's calculations, weighing evidence against doctrine, pragmatism against millennia of imperial policy. Remain on station, Vale finally said. I'm dispatching a medici team and a secondary investigation unit. If your data is accurate, we may need to reconsider protocols. The Vox clicked off. Batman slumped against the cavern wall, finally allowing himself to feel the pain in his arm. The wound was serious. 3 talon punctures, venom damage, possible infection. His combat drugs were keeping him conscious, but he needed proper medical attention. Sarah approached with a medical kit scavenged from their supplies. Let me see the arm. Batman extended it. She worked with surprising competence, cleaning the wounds, applying countertoxins synthesized from hybrid biology. We've dealt with Patriarch venom before, she explained. When scouts went missing, some returned infected. We learned to treat it. You should have told me that earlier. You should have asked before charging into the dark alone. She smiled grimly. Arrogant baseline humans, always thinking they don't need our help. Batman almost laughed. It hurt. Fair point. Kale stood over the Patriarch's corpse, his expression unreadable. What happens now? To us? To the settlement? That depends on Lord Vale, Batman said honestly. The evidence suggests you're not tyrannid slaves. But the Imperium doesn't change policy easily. There'll be investigations, interrogations, possibly quarantine. But not execution? If I have anything to say about it, no, not execution. Batman met his eyes. You fought beside me, killed the creature that cursed your bloodline, proved you choose humanity over the Hive. That has to count for something. In the Imperium? Kale's voice was bitter. Counting for something usually just means a slower death. Batman had no response. Because Kale was probably right. The medici team arrived 6 hours later, along with an inquisitorial investigation unit. They stabilized Batman's arm, purged the venom, and began processing the Patriarch's corpse for analysis. Vale arrived in person 3 days later, his expression grave as he reviewed the data in a command tent erected in the settlement's plaza. Batman stood at attention, his wounded arm in a sling but healing thanks to Imperial medical technology. The sequencer data is conclusive, Vale said without preamble. No psychic control structures in the hybrid population. The Patriarch was isolated, non-communicative with the greater hive mind. The settlement showed organized resistance rather than coordination with Xenos forces. Then they're innocent. They're anomalous. Vale set down the data slate. In 10,000 years of recorded encounters, we've never seen a genestealer population resistant to psychic domination. Either they're unique, or our doctrine is fundamentally flawed. Which do you believe? Vale was silent for a long moment. I believe our doctrine was built on incomplete data. We encountered hostile cults, assumed all hybrids were hostile, and never bothered investigating exceptions. It was efficient, brutal, and apparently wrong. Batman felt something he hadn't expected. Hope. Then you'll recommend policy changes? I'll recommend further investigation, controlled studies, genetic analysis across multiple sites. Vale's expression hardened. But Knight, understand what you've done. You've potentially exposed a systematic genocide spanning millennia. If the Imperium's Genestealer protocols are wrong, how many innocent populations have we exterminated? How many refugee settlements like this one have we burned because they carried the wrong genes? The weight of those implications settled like lead. Batman had spent his career in Gotham uncovering corruption, exposing systems that sacrificed the innocent for convenience. But this was that pattern scaled to galactic horror. What happens to the settlement? Batman asked. Quarantine. Observation. Genetic monitoring to ensure no further Patriarch emergence. If they remain stable, autonomous, and non-hostile. Vale paused. Then perhaps they become the first officially recognized hybrid population in Imperial history. A precedent. And if precedents aren't accepted? Then I'll spend my remaining years fighting an Imperium that would rather maintain comfortable lies than confront uncomfortable truths. Vale's organic eye fixed on Batman. Welcome to the Inquisition, Knight, where the real enemies aren't always the ones we're told to fight. Batman looked out at the settlement, 50,000 lives hanging in the balance, waiting to learn if justice was possible in a galaxy built on brutality. He'd crossed lines he never thought he would, killed people who might have been saved, compromised principles he'd held sacred. But he'd also proven that investigation mattered. That evidence could challenge doctrine, that one person refusing to follow orders blindly could change outcomes. It wasn't redemption, but it was something. And in the 41st millennium, something was all anyone could hope for. 3 months after the Patriarch's death, Batman stood in Vale's orbital fortress, staring at reports that should have been impossible. The settlement on Scintilla Magnus had become a test case. Inquisitorial biomagi had descended en masse, conducting genetic studies with unprecedented thoroughness. They'd sequenced every hybrid's DNA, mapped psychic resonance patterns, monitored for hive mind signals. The results were consistent. Autonomous behavior, no psychic domination, genuine choice. But the truly revolutionary discovery came from comparative analysis. We've reviewed records from 17 previous Genestealer purges, Vale said, pulling up hololith data. In 12 cases, the cults were genuinely hostile, coordinating with tyrannid fleets, actively summoning the swarm. But in 5 cases, he paused, his bionic eye whirring with what might have been emotion. In 5 cases, the genetic profiles matched the scintilla pattern. Isolated populations. No hive-mind connection. Refugees, not infiltrators. Batman's jaw tightened. You exterminated them anyway. We followed doctrine, saw hybrid traits, assumed tyrannid threat, executed purge orders. Vale's voice was hollow. 400,000 people, Knight. Across 5 worlds. Dead because we didn't ask questions. The number hung between them like an accusation. 400,000 lives. Families. Children. All erased because the Imperium prioritized efficiency over investigation. What happens now? Batman asked. The Ordo Xenos is resistant to policy changes. They argue that even isolated hybrids pose theoretical risks. That genetic corruption is inherently dangerous regardless of immediate threat. Vale dismissed the hololith. But Ordo Hereticus has jurisdiction over internal imperial matters. If these populations are refugees created by our own negligence, they're our responsibility. You're protecting them. I'm creating a framework for evaluation before execution. New protocols, genetic sequencing, psychic resonance testing, behavioral observation. Cults that show genuine tyrannid coordination still face immediate purging. But isolated populations like Scintilla. Vale's expression was grim. They get investigation first. Your investigation. Batman understood immediately. You're making me the specialist. You're uniquely qualified. No preconceptions about hybrids. Investigative skills unmatched in the Inquisition. And most importantly, you care about evidence over expediency. Vale handed him a data slate. 7 potential sites flagged for review. Hybrid populations that might be refugees rather than infiltrators. Your task? Investigate, evaluate, recommend action. Batman reviewed the list. Hive worlds, agri-worlds, even a forge world where Mechanicus genetic screening had detected anomalies. Thousands of lives hanging on his judgment. And if I determine they're genuine threats? Then you execute the purge order personally, as agreed. Vale's voice was iron. Your principles don't exempt you from consequences, Knight. If investigation reveals genuine danger, you pull the trigger. That's the price of this authority. Batman had killed the Patriarch, had executed cultists in the Underhive Temple, had crossed lines he never thought he would. But systematic purges? Exterminating entire populations? Could he become that? Should he? There's another issue, Vale continued. Your activities have attracted attention. Inquisitor Viridius of the Ordo Xenos has filed formal complaints. He argues you're compromised, emotionally invested in protecting Xenos' corrupted populations. He's demanded your censure. Let him demand. It's not that simple. Viridius commands significant political capital. He's pushing for a conclave. Formal review of your actions, your methods, your fitness for the Rosette. Vale's bionic eye focused with laser intensity. If the conclave rules against you, you'll be stripped of authority, mind scrubbed for intelligence, possibly executed as Xenos sympathizer. Batman had faced tribunals before, internal affairs investigations, Justice League oversight committees, but those operated under laws, rules, due process. The Inquisition's internal politics were different. Might made right, and authority flowed from whoever could muster the most support. When's the conclave? 6 months. Gives you time to complete at least 2 investigations. Build a record supporting your methods. Vale's expression softened fractionally. You've challenged 10,000 years of doctrine, Knight. That makes you either revolutionary or heretic. Prove you're the former before Viridius convinces everyone you're the latter. The first investigation took Batman to High Voss, where PDF reports mentioned gene-deviant populations hiding in chemical waste zones. What he found was a community of 3,000 hybrids, 2nd and 3rd generation, descended from factory workers exposed to tyrannid spores during an industrial accident decades prior. They'd built a functional society in toxic conditions that would kill baseline humans in hours. Their hybrid physiology let them tolerate environments the Imperium had written off as uninhabitable. They processed chemical waste, rendered it safe, actually contributed to the hive's economy through black market recycling operations, genetic sequencing, no hive-mind connection, psychic testing, autonomous decision-making, behavioral observation. They were workers, not warriors, refugees making the best of circumstances beyond their control. Batman recommended supervised integration rather than extermination. The local PDF commander protested, "They're gene deviants, they should burn." Batman pulled rank with the Inquisitorial Rosette, and the commander backed down. 3,000 lives saved. 1 precedent established. The second investigation was worse. Agri-World Demeter had reported cult activity for years. When Batman arrived, he found a genuine tyrannid infiltration. 4th and 5th generation hybrids actively coordinating with a patriarch, psychically linked to a distant hive fleet, preparing planetary defenses for sabotage. He'd hoped to find more refugees. Instead, he found exactly what doctrine predicted. Mind-controlled thralls serving the swarm. The purge order was his to execute. Batman led the operation personally: militarum support, coordinated strikes, systematic elimination of cult strongholds. He watched hybrids die, knowing they had no choice in their actions, knowing execution was mercy compared to what the Tyranids would do. 15,000 cultists eliminated. 0 survivors. Batman returned to the righteous endeavor and didn't leave his quarters for 3 days. Agatha found him there, staring at nothing, bolt pistol disassembled on his desk. "You did what was necessary," she said, sitting across from him. "I executed 15,000 people." Batman's voice was hollow. "Some were children. I watched them die because their genetics made them weapons." "Yes, and if you hadn't, they would have doomed 3 billion baseline humans when the Tyranid fleet arrived." Agatha's expression was sympathetic but firm. "This is the calculus, Knight. This is what the 41st Millennium demands. You can't save everyone. Sometimes you can only choose which tragedy to accept. In Gotham, I saved everyone. I found solutions that didn't require sacrifice. Gotham was one city. The Imperium is 1,000,000 worlds." She leaned forward. "You're doing something no Inquisitor has attempted in millennia, actually investigating before executing. You've saved 4,000 lives that would have been exterminated without question. Yes, you've also killed 15,000 who were genuine threats, but the balance is still positive." Batman wanted to believe that, wanted to accept the utilitarian math. But the faces haunted him, the hybrid children who'd looked at him with confusion as his forces closed in, not understanding why the man in black wanted them dead. "How do you live with it?" Batman asked. "The weight of it?" Agatha was quiet for a long moment. "I pray. I tell myself the Emperor judges souls, not bodies. That those I kill serve him in death, as they couldn't in life." She met his eyes. "But honestly, some nights I can't sleep. Some nights I wake up screaming. And some nights I wonder if we're the monsters, not the things we hunt." It was the most honest thing anyone in the Imperium had told him. "Thank you," Batman said. "Don't thank me. Just keep doing what you're doing. Keep investigating. Keep making the hard choices. Because if you stop, the Imperium goes back to blind extermination, and that would waste everything you've sacrificed." 4 months later, Batman stood before the Inquisitorial Conclave. 12 Inquisitor lords assembled to judge his methods. Viridius presented his case with cold precision. Inquisitor Knight has demonstrated Xenos sympathies. He's delayed purge operations for investigation. He's recommended integration of gene-deviant populations rather than righteous extermination. He represents dangerous precedent, hesitation in the face of alien threat. Vale countered. Inquisitor Knight has successfully identified and purged 1 genuine Tyranid threat while saving 4 populations that pose no danger. His methods increase efficiency by eliminating false positives. His investigations have refined our understanding of genestealer biology. The debate raged for hours. Batman stood silent, letting his record speak. The genetic data, the operation reports, the testimony from militarum officers who'd served under him. Finally, Inquisitor Lady Thrace, eldest of the Conclave, spoke. "The question before us is simple. Do we value accuracy over speed? Do we investigate before executing? Or do we maintain comfortable doctrine even when evidence suggests it's flawed? Doctrine has kept humanity alive for 10,000 years, Viridius argued. An investigation is what built that doctrine in the first place, Vale countered. The Emperor himself was a scientist before he became a god. He would demand we pursue truth, not comfortable lies. Thrace considered this. Then, Inquisitor Knight's methods are unorthodox, but his results are documented. I vote to maintain his authority, contingent on continued oversight and regular reporting. The vote was 7-5 in Batman's favor. Narrow, but sufficient. Viridius stood, his expression murderous. This conclave will regret this decision. When Knight's mercy dooms a world, remember you could have stopped him. He stormed out. Batman remained, feeling the weight of political enemies he'd just made. Vale approached after the others dispersed. You've survived, barely, but Viridius won't forget this. He'll be watching, waiting for you to fail. One mistake, and he'll have your head. Then I won't make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes, Knight. It's how you handle the consequences that matters. Vale handed him a new data slate. 5 more sites flagged for investigation. Your crusade continues. Batman took the slate. His crusade. That's what it had become. Not service to the Imperium, but a personal mission to inject justice into a system built on brutality. He'd changed since arriving in the 41st Millennium, killed when necessary, compromised principles he'd thought absolute, accepted that perfect solutions didn't exist in a galaxy at war. But he hadn't broken. Hadn't become the monster the Imperium wanted. He was still investigating, still seeking truth, still trying to save who he could while destroying genuine threats. In Gotham, he'd been the Dark Knight, a symbol of justice in a city drowning in crime. Here, in the 41st Millennium, he was becoming something else. The Imperium's dark conscience. The Inquisitor who asked questions before firing guns. The detective who proved investigation mattered, even when the galaxy demanded blind execution. It wasn't the crusade he'd chosen, but it was the one he had. And Bruce Wayne had never abandoned a crusade, no matter how impossible. "Where's the first site?" Batman asked. Vale smiled. A genuine expression, rare and valuable. Shrine World Ophelia 7. Reported hybrid population in forbidden zones. Could be refugees. Could be infiltrators. Could be something entirely new. Then I'll find out which. Batman secured the data slate. The Imperium wants certainty? I'll give them evidence. The Imperium wants compliance, Knight. You're offering accountability. That makes you dangerous. Vale's expression turned serious. But it also makes you necessary. Keep fighting. Keep investigating. And maybe, just maybe, you'll prove this galaxy can be better than it is. Batman looked out the viewport at the stars beyond. 1,000,000 worlds out there. Countless populations hanging in the balance between justice and genocide. He was one man, one Inquisitor, one detective, trying to change a system built on 10,000 years of brutality. The odds were impossible. Good. He'd always preferred impossible odds. Because in the darkness of the 41st Millennium, someone had to stand for investigation over execution, for evidence over assumption, for justice over expedience. And if that someone had to be a detective from a forgotten age who refused to surrender his principles even in a galaxy that demanded it, so be it. Batman activated his Vox. Prepare the shuttle. We have work to do. The crusade continued. The Imperium of Man had endured for 10,000 years through rigid doctrine, uncompromising faith, and the willingness to sacrifice billions for the survival of trillions. Its mechanisms were brutal by necessity, its methods shaped by millennia of existential warfare against threats that defied comprehension. Into this merciless reality fell a man who should not exist, a detective from an age so distant it had been forgotten even by history. Bruce Wayne had built his identity on principles the 41st Millennium considered luxuries: investigation before judgment, evidence over assumption, the belief that every life held value worth preserving. The galaxy tested those principles immediately. It forced him to kill when he'd sworn never to take life. It confronted him with threats so absolute that mercy became complicity. It demanded he choose between saving the few or protecting the many, between maintaining his moral code or ensuring humanity's survival. He'd crossed lines. The temple collapse that killed 47 cultists, including a child. The Demeter purge that exterminated 15,000 hybrids. Each decision carved scars into his conscience, that would never fully heal. In Gotham, he'd been the Dark Knight who never broke his one rule. Here, he'd become Inquisitor Knight, a man who killed when necessary, compromised when required, and accepted that perfect justice was impossible in an imperfect galaxy. But he hadn't broken, hadn't become the mindless executioner the Imperium's doctrine demanded. Where others saw gene deviants worthy only of extermination, he saw refugees deserving investigation. Where protocol demanded immediate purging, he insisted on evidence. Where 10,000 years of tradition said shoot first, he proved that asking questions could save thousands without compromising security. The settlement on Scintilla Magnus thrived under inquisitorial observation. 50,000 hybrid and baseline humans living in supervised coexistence, proving that genetic corruption didn't inevitably mean tyrannid loyalty. It was a single precedent, fragile and contested, but it existed. Other settlements might follow. Other investigations might reveal that the Imperium's comfortable doctrines had justified genocides against innocent populations for millennia. That truth terrified the established order. Inquisitor Viridius and those like him saw Batman not as an asset, but as a threat. Someone whose methods questioned the very foundations of imperial policy. They would oppose him, hunt him, wait for any failure to justify his destruction. But Batman had faced opposition before. In Gotham, he'd been hunted by police, criminals, and corrupt officials simultaneously. He'd persevered through isolation, betrayal, and impossible odds. The 41st Millennium was larger, more brutal, more unforgiving, but the principle remained the same. Stand for justice even when the system opposes you. Investigate even when execution is easier. Save who you can, mourn who you can't, and never stop fighting for what's right. Vale understood this better than most. The Inquisitor Lord had spent decades enforcing brutal doctrines, watching planets burn, accepting that the Emperor's work required monstrous choices. Yet Batman's arrival had reminded him of something fundamental. That investigation wasn't weakness, that evidence mattered. That the Imperium's survival didn't require abandoning all principles. Vale had become an unlikely ally, a man powerful enough to shield Batman's unorthodox methods while cynical enough to recognize their necessity. Together, they represented something dangerous, the possibility of change in an Imperium built on stagnation. If one Inquisitor could challenge 10,000 years of doctrine and survive, others might follow. If investigation could replace blind execution without compromising security, the Imperium's relationship with its own citizens might evolve. If mercy could coexist with pragmatism, perhaps the galaxy's grimdark future wasn't as inevitable as everyone believed. But change came slowly in the 41st Millennium, measured in centuries rather than years. Batman's crusade was only beginning. 7 sites awaited investigation. Hundreds more might exist beyond those. Each would test his principles, force impossible choices, demand he balance justice against survival. Some populations would be innocent refugees deserving protection. Others would be genuine threats requiring immediate purging. And always the weight of those decisions would rest on his conscience. In Gotham, Batman had been a symbol, the Dark Knight who proved one person could make a difference, that justice could exist even in the darkest places. Here, in the 41st Millennium, he was becoming something else. Not a symbol, but a methodology. Proof that investigation mattered. That asking questions before firing guns saved lives without sacrificing security. That even in a galaxy at war, principles could survive if someone was willing to fight for them. The Imperium had tried to break him, had forced him to compromise, to kill, to accept that perfect solutions didn't exist. It had succeeded in changing him. He was no longer the idealistic vigilante from Gotham who believed every criminal could be saved. He'd learned that sometimes execution was mercy, that some threats were too absolute for redemption, that survival occasionally demanded sacrifice. But the Imperium hadn't destroyed him. Bruce Wayne remained beneath the inquisitorial armor, a detective who demanded evidence, an investigator who refused to accept comfortable lies, a man who believed that how you fought mattered as much as why you fought. And in the endless darkness of the 41st millennium, that belief might be the most dangerous heresy of all. Because if Batman could prove that justice and survival weren't mutually exclusive, if he could demonstrate that investigation improved outcomes rather than hindering them, if he could show that the Imperium's brutal calculus wasn't the only path forward, then perhaps this galaxy of endless war might impossibly find something it had lost 10,000 years ago. Hope. The crusade continued. The investigations awaited. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, a man in black armor prepared to prove that even in the grimdark future, one person asking the right questions could change everything. Batman had come to the 41st millennium as a relic from a gentler age. He would remain as something the Imperium desperately needed but couldn't acknowledge. Its conscience, its investigator, its proof that justice could exist even when the galaxy insisted it was impossible. The Emperor protects those who serve Sa. But who protects the Emperor's subjects from the Imperium itself? In the end, that question fell to a detective who refused to stop asking it.